Now, lots of our candidates ask about establishing and buying houses in Australia, and then how this can be used as an Australia tie to apply their returning resident visa. Now, I mentioned property in my previous video. Property can be owned under various different structures. It can be owned by one person, two person related, two person unrelated, or multiple people unrelated or related. It doesn't matter. So it can be owned by human, right? By people. That most people may be able to understand. Most people understand, probably thinking property can only be owned by adults. They have to be related. They have to be spouse. And no, it doesn't happen to be like that. It can be owned by a child. It can be owned by a child and their parents. It can be owned by brothers or sisters. It can be owned by whatever kind of the joint tenants. Okay, as long as you mention percentage of their ownership in that property. Now, so property can be owned by multiple people. A second structure, the property can be owned by a company, proprietary limited company. It can be owned by a trust, right? It can be owned by any of the entity identified in the title that allowing you specific state, allowing to have that ownership. Now, for example, some candidate asked me, how am I going to demonstrate if I have a home in Australia? Can I use it as a ties? Of course, indeed, of course. Yes, you have a home in Australia. That's Australia ties, isn't it, right? Of course. That probably not enough. For instance, if you spend 1 year out of 5 in Australia, and then you say, I have a permanent home in Australia, I'm renting out, that will be enough. Okay. However, if you spend 3 days out of 5 years, that probably, and then you're kind of not caring about this property at all, and that won't be enough. Now, if you don't live in that property and then you rent out, that will be considered for income and business activity because it is your investment property. Okay, now talk about taxation part. We did have a registered tax agent share some information about taxation part. How do you actually manage that? Subscribe my channel, make sure subscribe my channel. I'll share some of the information in our next video. But how do you do that to manage your property as a business activity? Of course, that's a business activity, isn't it? If you mentioned that business can be something like this, exchange your product service in order to get paid. So if you have a rental property, right? Rental property got rental payment each month. That is a payment. What do you exchange? You exchange for the room, the space for people to use. Therefore, it's a business activity. Now, if you consider that's business activity, normally rental property, people in Australia might personally own the property. They might decide to use a company to own the property, and the company therefore need to submit a tax return. So rental property can be considered a business, okay? And that can be considered a business ties, as simple as that. Now, if we say only spend 1 day out of 5 years, I will need you to have some multiple ties. It can be a family ties plus a business ties. Of course, I encourage candidates to really, after you got permanent visa, even you have other commitment, in Australia, outside Australia, I want you to at least spend some holiday in Australia, so you have kind of ties in Australia. Again, the first 5 years will be fairly easy, but the next 5 years, in a 10 years role, if you hardly spend any time in Australia, probably you need strong ties. Of course, the longer, the better. You need to really actively observe the expiry date. For our clients, we sent a notification to them 3 months before their visa expiry date, so they know they will need to lodge. The best way to lodge, of course, it's before your expiry date kick in, right? 3 months before, and you have time to prepare. You can come to Australia and apply, get renewed, and then figure out something else later on. If you really forgot about that expiry date and you don't have a visa to come in, you can still come in with any other visa. It can be a Visa visa, e-visa, ETA, it can be any of that, and apply onshore. That's various pathway for that one. But for any of the candidate, I think you don't need to worry about too much. The only thing you really need to do is plan things in advance. If you think ultimately you come to Australia, you actually come settle in Australia, you will actually need to think about establishing your own residence in Australia. That's very, very important. Australia property, of course, is booming and it's very, very good. Very, very good asset now, in considering of our own international situation. So having Australia primary residence will be a first thing you need to think and you need to do as soon as possible. Primary residence. If you don't have a primary residence in a 10 years time, it'll be very hard to demonstrate you're actually interested in Australia at all. Because primary residence, for instance, you might have an asset elsewhere, you might have, a property somewhere else. You can really think about if you do come to Australia and you want to experience Australia's property rights, you want to enter the market as soon as possible, as you practical, right? Do not wait. And then because getting properties, dream property or property for investment purpose for now, but later on you want to live in, that takes time. So it doesn't happen like, I need to think about this now. Oh my God, what I need to do? Because I noticed in the past, lots of candidates, they forgot about that and your final day and then they have expired. They won't have enough time. If you really want to, if you know that you're not going to spend enough time in Australia, you need to consider primary residence for first. Of course, if you that long time you are not coming to Australia, the secondary investment probably it will be your next move. So if you have two properties, for instance, properties under your own name, which is primary residence, because you can say, that's my primary residence, I'll come move in 2 years time. However, I've got my work commitment. I'm not able to find a job in Australia easily, but I need to support the whole family. I have 2 kids to go to private education, private school. So I need to work in my home country. However, I have a primary residence, your home in Australia. Now that's Australia ties. Now later on, you said, probably I need to own an investment property. I'm renting out, and I'm paying real estate agent, property manager to manage my house, and I'm communicating with her or with him by email, and then we lodge tax return. Our tax agent help us to lodge tax return for that properties. That's business ties, right? Very straightforward. So don't forget to subscribe our channel. I'll talk more about how to really structure properties. So that's, my personal interest in that property, Australia property market. If you want more information, don't forget to, hit subscribe the channel. If you're someone who's interested in Global Talent Program, there's a link below. We do assessment. You can book a consultation with me as well. I'll see you next time. Bye.